Okay, so for the second lab assignment, it's an adaptation of our coffee sales program that we were working on during the class. You don't have to do a PDP for this or any of the rest of the programs for the homework. So the one PDP, you turn in your gas calc and the PDP that goes with it, and then the third item for the lab is this coffee sales. The homework will have 3 files. They're all 3 Python files. So we'll talk about those in just a second, briefly. With coffee sales, I say it's an adaptation of what we did in class. We did basically coffee, but this is a situation where you have to deal with tea and cappuccino and a total of cups and a total of sales. The price, we don't get into totaling because that wouldn't make any sense. So this table here is a little bit or a lot fussy when you compare it to what we were working on in the lab. So I'm not going to give you as much of the answer on this, but I'm going to give you some ideas. So basically, your coffee shop, you're going to have to ask not just how many cups of coffee were sold and the price of coffee, but you're going to have to ask how many cups of tea and the price of tea, how many cups of cappuccino and the price of that. And then you will have to have separate subtotals for each, and then you'll have to have a grand total. Okay, so how are you going to do that? Looking over here, for instance, there's some information in here that we won't need. I'm looking at the output from what I have put in for slide 12 and 13. Okay, so we will still ask for the number of cups of coffee, and we'll still ask for the price of coffee. And we'll need that total sales of coffee, but we have to differentiate between that and the other drinks. And as far as the format that we were printing out in is pretty different from the format shown here. So some of these lines won't really help us, but some will. So one of the things that I would suggest doing is getting rid of things or changing them coffee data. And then, we need to adapt. So we have cups, coffee, price, coffee. And that means that this has to be adapted. Cups, coffee. And price, coffee has to be adapted. And anywhere coffee sales, that was fine because we had the word coffee in it. So that example right there would need to be adapted twice for tea and for cappuccino. That's kind of square one with this program, is to take the coffee model and make a section that's tea data and cappuccino data and kind of go from there. This stuff, as far as the printing, probably not going to help you that much. So, you could save it or you could get rid of it. But for right now, just, // so that it's not running. And then go ahead and duplicate that, paste, and adapt to tea and cappuccino. That part is actually pretty easy. And so every time you run it, it's kind of a pain to test because you have to keep answering, how many of each of these and the price. So that's why I set it up with simple data here for the test. So I would advise to use, the simple data for the test just to make sure it's coming out right. And then spend the majority of your time trying to figure out how are you going to use Python 3 for formatting in order to print this table. Okay, this has I'm going to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 elements in the row. So that's a hint. This printout only has 3. See, so that's not good enough for you. It's a place to start. If I look at gas calc, okay, that one as well had 1, 2, 3 items in it, whether I did it in the shorthand or the longhand, 1, 2, 3. Okay, so you can use this as a model, but you know that you'll be adding more formatting units and you'll be adding more items that are being formatted on the group side. Or if you choose to use the shorthand, you know, you would be adding more units to the right there. And I think that it's best if I just, you know, let you play with it and see how it comes out. If I was to advise you, I kind of feel that this seems more straightforward for learning, and just keeping in mind that each one of the units inside a curly bracket is a column. And when we look at something like this, we have to assume that that is a column. Okay, so that's why I count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 units. This row, 1, 2, 3, 4, only has 4 units. So those have to be wider in order to line up. Okay, so I think I'll just leave it at that and see how you do with our new Python 3.4 formatting. I don't want you to use the old method because we are now taking a turn toward this new kind of formatting. Turn that in for the lab along with gas calc and the PDP. It should be turned in today, and I will keep an eye on my email to see people who are, you know, not having access or needing to, you know, have an alternative time for the due date. Let's take a minute and look at the homework. 3 files, if anything, simpler than the lab. This one is calculating the area of a rectangle, and we are asking the user for their units of measurement, the length and the width, and then our program is calculating the area and reporting out the result there, and it is rounded, and whatever they said for the units will feed into the sentence. So when they say inches here, inches comes here. If they say centimeters, centimeters would come here. Alright, so this line here is dynamic based on, you know, this, and this being different for each user. That's area.py. Sales tax.py. This one is more similar to what we did in the lab. This program, the user they have a purchase order total, then they have to calculate sales tax for the state, sales tax for the county at different rates. So you need to know how to change a percent into a decimal in order to calculate that properly. And then it adds up the purchase order amount, state tax, county tax, and the total cost. It's a table with 1, 2, 3 columns there, so a little bit simpler than the 6-column situation in the lab. This one does ask you to use the round function, which has been mentioned but hasn't really been explained thoroughly. Rounding is something that you do to the number itself, versus, you know, when we apply a formatting function, we're just making a number look like it has 2 decimal places, whereas rounding is actually rounding it to a certain number of decimal places. This is the number of places it's being rounded to. So with the rounding, that is something new that takes place. That does not take place in the print statement. That takes place with the calculation. Okay? Then the print statement, you can assume already, has 2 decimal places when you get to that point. Okay, so that's sales tax. And then we have math1.py. Now this one here, right underneath your docstring, you need to write import math in order to be able to run this program. That's because some of the functions that you're using here would require the math module to be imported to Python in order to use it. Now, you will need to look some of these up. Basically, your program is just printing, you're printing this together with the answer in your program. And so, just bearing in mind that 7, it doesn't come from me just typing 7. That comes from me applying the round function to that number. Okay, if that makes sense. Likewise, this being rounded, I'm not just typing that into the print statement. So you're applying some additional math functions, and in some cases you're going to need to look those up. How do I do square roots, sine, pi, etc.? Okay, that one is, it looks a little spooky, but it's actually pretty easy. So the homework and the lab, we have 3 lab items: gas calc, PDP, and coffee sales. Then for the homework we have area, sales tax, and math 1. Hopefully the school will be back in session so you can speak to the tutors. I'm available online, and I am going to be opening up a chat window. Once I give people time to look at these videos, I'm going to open up a chat window so that we can carry on something of a conversation given what we have to work with, and try to just make do with missing class. I'll keep my eye out for your assignments and give you the best feedback possible. And again, those tutors may be very helpful this time since we couldn't come to school. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week.